Hello, my name is Caitlin Kobitz, and today I'll be presenting my project for the Indigenous people of the world on Australian Aboriginals. Some background history on Australian Aboriginals is that there are various people of the Australian mainland, Tasmania, and often the Tiwi Islands. There's different groups all around there, and that Australia Aboriginals people are one of two distinct groups of Indigenous peoples of Australia, the other being the Torres Strait Islander people. Australian Aboriginals originally came from Southeast Asia and have lived in Australia for about 45 to 55,000 years. Different tribes then came from Southwest Asia and Southern Africa to the land. More than 200 Aboriginal languages were originally spoken, and the Aboriginal people were hunter-gatherers and didn't grow crops or domesticate animals apart from the dingo. Aboriginals gathered people that would be dispersed into small groups for gathering to use resources. Some facts on land location are that more than 400 distinct Australian Aboriginal people have been identified and distinguished by their names, designating their ancestral languages by dialects or distinctive speech patterns. Historically, these groups lived in three main cultural areas, known as the southern, northern, and central parts of Australia. The northern and southern areas have richer natural marine and woodland resources because they were more densely populated than the central area for the terrain. Aboriginal Australians were limited to the range of foods occurring naturally in their area, but they knew exactly when, where, and how to find everything edible. Anthropologists and nutrition experts who have studied the tribal diet in the land have found it to be well balanced with most of the nutrients modern dietitians would recommend today. But food was not obtained without effort. In some areas, both men and women had to spend from half to two-thirds of each day hunting and foraging for their food. In here I have some graphs and diagrams of Australia where they were most densely populated for their tribes on the bottom, and how reserves were set up today and land rights in today's terms. Colonization. One of the first known large settlements began in 1778, where there was its first contact through the settlers and First Nations people of Australia. In 1790, an Aboriginal leader, Pemulwuy, in Sydney, resisted the Europeans, waging warfare on the settlers. In a series of wars known as the Hawkesbury and Nippon Wars, which spanned for 26 years from 1790 all up the way until 1816. In 1838, 28 Aboriginal people were killed at the Mulway Creek Massacre. 7 of the convict settlers responsible, 6 white men and 1 African man, were tried and convicted for the hanged murders. Many Aboriginal communities resisted the settlers, such as the Noongar of southwestern Australia, led by the Yagon, who was killed in 1833. Many frontier wars left many lives lost between both sides of settlers and First Nations people fighting for land rights between both of them. The number of violent deaths at the hands of white people is still the subject of debate, with a figure around 10,000 to 20,000 deaths being advanced by historians such as Henry Reinholds for frontier wars and civilians being killed. Out of current populations for all Aboriginals that are Australian, Torres Strait Islander populations make up for only 4%, totaling in at 32,200 people as of today. The Torres Strait Islander people speak 2 distinct languages, which include Kalalagaya or Kalakawaya, which are dialects of the same language. The Torres Strait Islanders share many common aspects with Australian Aboriginals for their culture, especially in terms of Dreamtime belief. Many slight variants come from the location of the islands being close to Papua New Guinea and the differential meanings of trade within both cultures. The two peoples' way of life can be also seen as very similar in gathering and hunting aspects and daily life for traditions and ceremonies among all of the people. In these pictures can be seen Aboriginals with some diseases such as smallpox and contact between the settlers in which these diseases could have been transmitted. Language. A language family is a group of languages related through descent from a common ancestral language or parental language. Aboriginal languages and the Torres Strait language as a whole can be concluded from the Tasmanian languages and passed down. Some differences to tell many Aboriginal languages apart from Australia is the different dialects that have been dispersed through different tribes and people along the area of the land. Over the years, some merging of few languages has happened throughout history, from tribes joining and others being killed off, where the languages then have been found and made into new ones. Only 76 languages can be spoken today in Australian, whereas originally there could have been over 350 estimated. Culture. Their view centered on the dreaming or dreamtime is a complex concept embodying the past, present, and future, as well as the aspect of life after physical death. The transformation into a heavenly or earthly bodies that withdraw from earth and into the spiritual realm is a religious belief among many tribes. The totemic belief individuals and groups are linked in many different ways to both things of nature and the all-powerful beings of the spiritual realm is another common belief for the dreamtime aspect. Many of the tribes take part in religious ceremonies and communities. This can be such as the Great Sandy Desert Women that have sacred rites and objects to celebrate. Some more facts about the culture and daily life of Australian Aboriginals is that women would go into groups in the countryside with wood-digging sticks and plated dilly bags or wooden columns. This could be used to find resources all across the land, which areas were tough to get underneath the earth. Larger animals and birds such as kangaroos and emus were speared or disabled with a thrown club, boomerang, or stone. And many of these indigenous hunting devices were used and created and invented to get within striking distance of prey. The men were excellent trackers and stalkers, approaching their prey running where there was cover or freezing and crawling when in the open. They were careful to stay downwind and sometimes covered themselves with mud to disguise their smell. Fish were sometimes taken by hand by stirring up the muddy bottom of a pool until they rose to the surface, or by placing the crushed leaves of poisonous plants in the water to help bring the fish drawn in and rise to the surface. Fish spears, nets, wicker, or stone traps were also used in different areas. Art comes in many forms for Australian Aboriginals, such as music. A popular musical instrument is called the didgeridoo and was a wind instrument developed by Australian Aboriginals around 2,000 years ago. It is a part of traditions for Australians today and can be seen as one of their most popular music ceremonies. In many Aboriginal art forms across Australia, there's the use of dots in paintings and in markings for skin during ceremonies. This can be seen as a symbolic pattern carved on artifacts in ancient rock galleries. These are used in sand paintings and on body paintings for ceremonies, which dates back to Aboriginal traditions that have been passed down through their culture. Dancing can also be seen as an important art form to Australian Aboriginals. It is used in marriage ceremonies and rite of passages for people between the ages of 10 and 16 years. It represents the passing from childhood to adulthood. It's used for many things with decorative body paintings to indicate the ceremonies being performed. Aboriginal people still maintain their ancient and burial ceremonies with rituals because these are of crucial importance to involve the whole community and bring people together. It helps derive their souls from dark times and to join the dreaming aspect for the past, present, and future. This is a sacred ceremony for all people of Australian Aboriginal descent. This is my works cited, and this concludes my presentation on Aboriginal Australians. Thank you for listening.